Okay, we're back. So Valerie and Jose were both with us last year, so really looking forward and really appreciate them joining us and bringing an update. Jenna's new to the stage and has got a really great story. One of the things that we're really trying to help the audience understand is, this kind of interconnected, global cross-border world that we live in, where global D2C crosses boundaries. So it's less about U.S. outbound, which is kind of really how this community started and a lot of what we've talked about in the past, and really more about, brands that are coming to the U.S. And Jenna will help us with a little bit of that. I think what I'd like to do is let Valerie do a quick introduction, and then Jenna, and then Jose has been kind enough to pull together some update slides, so he gets a little promo with his slides as well. So Valerie, you want to say hello and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes. Oh, good, it's working. Yeah, Jose is like that group member who does all the work for the rest of the group. We appreciate it. So I've been in retail for 20 years now, and I've been a little bit all over the place, both from a functional perspective. I've spent time in corporate finance. I spent time, running a PMO office, but then also from a country perspective, I've worked across different countries, different regions, and I've lived also in Asia for a couple of years, not that long ago. But currently, I am leading international digital for American Eagle and Aerie. So that means all markets outside of the US. It's a mix of owned and operated and licensed partnerships. So it's a little bit fragmented for for various reasons, good reasons, historical reasons. And it's also interesting because outside of Canada, at least, all of our international sites are COVID babies. So they're all about 2 years old. So very different than the online business that you think of when you think of American Eagle US, obviously, which is extremely established. I've been here for about almost 2 years now.
Great. Hi, I'm Jenna Fleetman-Posner, CDO of Snipes. Snipes is a global sneaker and streetwear company. We've been established since 1998 in Germany, actually is where we began. We're thriving in 12 countries now in Europe, and I am a representation of our global expansion from Europe into the US market, which is different. It's definitely been an interesting ride coming into the US in early 2019. We've been relatively new to the US market. We've gone through 4 acquisitions in that time period, the past 3 years, seen some pretty exponential growth, and it's been crazy, to be honest. My background, I've been at Snipes for 3.5 years. I came from the retail tech vendor side, so I am a spy.
Yeah, watch out when you talk to her in one-to-one. She knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, for the first 15 years of my career, I was building technology, selling technology, enabling partnerships and integrations, and really serving the retail industry. And so it's been very interesting being on the other side, learning more about how technology is purchased, how cross-departmental alignment is created, how budgets are managed and maintained. It's given me some really unbelievable experience and perspective, and I love it. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and talk about our global expansion.
Good morning, my name is Jose Nino. I'm the VP of Digital and Ecom for USP Global Licensing. We're the retail and licensing arm for the United States Polo Association, US Polo SSN. I've been at the company 4 years previously. I was in a similar role at Perry Ellis International, and then previously at Cosabella. And I started my career in finance, actually, at Morgan Stanley. And after a few months, I knew it wasn't for me. So I moved on to ecom, and I've been in the industry, for about 18 years now. So thank you, GELF, for having me once again. And good morning, everyone.
And thank you, Jose, for being one of our leading thought leaders. We were doing the prep call, and Jose was like remembering things from 8 years ago. Like, oh, remember the Crocs rollout that kind of had to be taken back into the garage?
I think that picture may be 8 years ago.
Well, he's like, all right, sorry about that. Anyways, let's, why don't we, do your intro slide there. You get your eye candy as a reward for slide development.
All right, let's see. All right, so I'll just be speaking a few minutes about global trends in the post-pandemic world. Last year, as Ken mentioned, I had a few slides that spoke to expectations and forecasts for the following year, and here we are the following year. Beforehand, here's a quick sizzler video, 30 seconds about the brand. Okay, great. So yeah, we're the official brand of the United States Polo Association. We're in many countries. We have about 1,200 stores. And the retail journey really started about 20 years ago, but the brand has really accelerated in the last 10, 15 years. So this is a slide I presented last year. It spoke of industry standards regarding comps in different regions pre-COVID, COVID years, COVID quarters, and then the 2022 forecast. And back then, we thought APAC as an industry thought that APAC would be one of the leaders regarding e-com comp. And the reality is that we've seen it's actually LATAM, and as an industry, it's LATAM as well. And I'll point that out in a moment. So again, this was the slide from last year, and what's happened so far in 2022. We've seen a lot of traction in LATAM, specifically Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, despite their inflation. And industry-wide, you're also seeing a lot of growth in LATAM. APAC territories, however, it varies quite a bit. We're doing quite a lot in Japan with marketplaces, especially on ZozoTown. But in China, there are a lot of headwinds. So previously, the industry thought that China would lead APAC growth for all territories. But the reality is a lot of the marketplaces are starting to see normalizing numbers. And this is not just us, it's industry standard information that you can quickly find. US has been a mixed bag. Obviously, with inflation, it's been a little problematic. I think what brands are saying is they're having to cut back on a lot of their previous value adds. For example, we previously had a free shipping threshold of $50. And although FedEx said a little while ago they're increasing the rates by 6%, I'm pretty sure it's more like 60% because the costs are very, very considerable. So now our free shipping threshold is $150. And I think a lot of the value adds that you saw domestically are starting to be limited. And then UK, this is an interesting story. That slide about the high conversion is incredibly on point. Our conversion rate in UK is the highest of all our DTC e-com sites. So despite the high conversion, it's still very challenged to see good AOVs in the orders because of the inflation that we're seeing there.
Why don't we pause and see what these guys are seeing? So Valerie, you've got the 2-year-olds, if you will. What are you guys seeing as far as overall global growth? I mean, was there that boom and then it's, kind of, I guess, come back down to earth, so to speak, as far as growth rates?
Yeah, I mean, because we're so young, I think it's a bit of an unfair starting point. So we've still seen very healthy growth. However, it's been a lot harder to achieve than we expected a year ago when we were doing the budgets for this year. So while we're sort of like, still sort of like eking out most of the growth rates that we had expected, which are a little bit higher than we're seeing here, again, because we're only, getting into our third year here, it has definitely been not the explosive success that we thought it was going to be last year and that we were sort of on trend for it to be last year. I would say we're seeing a lot of similar things to you from a market to market perspective. APAC is definitely not the sort of like obvious win that it was 5 years ago, 7 years ago when I was in APAC. At that time, it just felt like you could almost do no wrong, especially as a foreign brand. It's not the same anymore. There are a lot of local competitors. There's a lot of local sentiment around local competitors. The marketing world there is similar here. It's getting to be more fragmented and thus more difficult to gain traction and the ROAS that you need to drive the traffic. So it's definitely we're seeing very similar things, and we have a very kind of strict focus strategy now. You know what I mean? No longer can we just hit all the markets that we want and just see what sticks in APAC. We really need to focus on where we're seeing traction and go further. And LATAM, we're seeing huge growth. I think we also, Mexico, same, it's leading our growth there. We have historical presence in Mexico from a store perspective, so that's definitely helping our e-commerce growth there. But we're seeing very, very similar trends.
Yeah, and I remember we mentioned that you guys were, again, focusing on those core markets. But the Middle East, I was thinking of you when I put that slide together. That was something you guys had mentioned, seeing surprising growth there.
Yes, we've been in the Middle East for a long time physically. So I think our license partner there, it's a longer than 10-year relationship at this point. So we have a lot of traction from a brand perspective. But from an e-commerce perspective, again, we are new there. And that growth has been the strongest and the most, it's been hard to even slow down for the last few years. And I mean, I think it's this most recent Economist that has the Middle East on the cover, as you know. I think that's probably where some of the Russian money is going. And so I think not that that's a good thing, but I think everybody's excited about what that market is going to look like compared to the other markets that are all kind of seeing the same headwinds. So it is definitely an exciting place. And I would say that I was surprised by which markets are doing well for us there. It's not necessarily the same as the stores all the time. And actually, we're also in certain markets because of some of the like conservative nature of the markets. In certain markets, we see a better penetration of women's sales online than we do men, because there's the comfort of being able to try it on at home and not have to go into a store where you have male associates working there. So we see very interesting details country by country.
And Jenna, what are you guys seeing in Europe versus US? I mean, 10x growth here, obviously some of it through acquisition, but you guys are killing it.
Yeah, I would say there's micro and macro factors, right? There's the nature of our business is pretty unique. So obviously, by way of acquisition, we're acquiring our way into additional countries, additional states, and that's helping to kind of push our growth past, I would say, this more ubiquitous baseline of growth that we're seeing across the globe. I also think from a micro perspective, in the U.S. in 2022, we've seen that like store foot traffic it's back, right? People are coming back into the store. And so what we've done with Snipes in the U.S. market is really dedicated to that omni-channel experience, making sure that we're really capitalizing on data capture in store, making sure we're leveraging that data, those opt-ins, to retarget and remarket and drive those customers to become more omni-channel and ultimately more valuable for us. So the majority of our growth globally across the past year or two, store closures were really, really big for us. It really forced all of our customers to come online. And when I talk about the unique nature of our business, this guy knows, you should show those off. Yeah.
Right, there we go.
The unique nature of our business, we have a level of product that has incredibly high demand and relatively low quantity as it compares. So we have product that we can essentially guarantee 100% sell-through on. So having all of those pairs, right, instead of those pairs that were historically allocated to stores and to e-commerce, they were all flowing through e-commerce. So it gave us an opportunity to acquire a lot of customers, a lot of revenue, and ultimately shift some of the attention from stores to digital during that time.
So in Europe, any growth surprises, growth disappointments, or I know you're kind of heads down in the U.S.
I mean, no, it's just been this constant crazy. I would say that's the surprise, is that we haven't really seen it wane yet.
Right,
which
so
is
2 takeaways: constant crazy. I think
constant
is
crazy.
exactly what's going on. And where's the Russian money going? That's something we didn't think about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jose. Speaking of the Middle East, I know you've got some good stories there.
Yeah, Middle East, next slide here. We speak a little bit about Turkey and also Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia and UAE, we have several stores. Our e-com sites will launch next year. But our global flagship e-com is Turkey. And Turkey is our second largest territory behind the US. We have over 200 stores in Turkey, about 500-600 million retail in Turkey. So it's a huge region for us. And before pandemic, most of our sales were offline, and that continues today. But what we're saying, and which is similar to the US narrative, is that when we look at our customer records, we're seeing a lot more what I call hybrid customers than pre-COVID. So pre-COVID and during COVID, obviously, we had 2 very siloed segments: e-com only customers and retail store only customers. And now we're seeing a large majority suddenly become hybrid customers, where they're simultaneously shopping both our e-com site and our retail stores.
Are they looking for some kind of omni-channel connection there, or is that still early?
The omni-channel connection is definitely the loyalty program. We launched our loyalty program here domestically in the US earlier this year. And whereas beforehand, our in-store email collection rate was about 3 to 5%, now with the loyalty program, it's about 35% of our total list. times 70 stores in the US, that starts to compound quickly. And that's how I think brands are thriving today with the omni-channel hybrid model, where they're leveraging in-store programs to activate their online customers much more so than before. We're seeing in the US, we're seeing it in Turkey as well. So what's happening so far in 2022? So Turkey had a lot of lockdowns like China. So this has created a lot of pent-up demand. We've seen it this year. On a constant currency basis, our sales are up about 80% e-com, and that's off a very mature number. Our e-com operations in Turkey are already stronger than our pre-COVID numbers. In fact, August was our all-time record in e-com. But our partner has several brands in Turkey, and it's the same narrative. Those brands that have a hybrid model to leverage both offline and online are really doing well. Here domestically, you see brands like Peloton and Rent the Runway, digital-only brands starting to really struggle in a post-pandemic world. Inflation is a huge deal in Turkey. I mean, we complain about 6-7% inflation here, and in Turkey, it's large double digits. It's pretty frightening, but then you look at just the regional growth, their GDP is still relatively strong. So normally, obviously, when you see massive inflation numbers, it takes a toll on GDP and consumer confidence and other things, but we don't really see that in Turkey. We see people are paying a lot more for products that they previously paid for compared to how they previously paid. We're just seeing that AOVs are smaller. So the total bag is smaller, but the sales are definitely much larger. And then APAC, this was a slide I presented last year. Our online sales continue to grow, and we still think APAC is our future online leader. We thought it would be that this year, but to your point, Valerie, APAC has been a struggle. China has been a struggle. And interestingly enough, the marketplaces that used to really dominate the region in China are showing a lot of resistance, not only our brand, but other brands as well. In fact, the last 618 promotion, JD had their news release was about 3 to 7% comps, whereas you're used to seeing double digits. And we're seeing this affect our penetration in different marketplaces in China. However, we have started to really evolve as a brand online. Social commerce was already starting to trend last year. And this year, social commerce is actually a majority of our e-commerce sales. This next slide here, this is 2021 distribution of revenue compared to first half this year. And live broadcast, live streaming, really social commerce is now the majority. And it's come at the expense of decreasing turnover at Tmall and JD, and not as much as JD and Tmall, but VIP as well. And actually, in the last couple months, we've started penetrating a lot Little Red Book, which is a social commerce in China, and we're investing a lot in H2 for the second half this year in Little Red Book. But this is pretty dramatic to me. The live broadcast takeaway is
Yeah, no, I mean
significant.
this was kind of the pie chart that caught my eye. I mean, as Jim and I mentioned, we're going to kick off the afternoon with Deborah from Coresight, talking a little bit about what are some of the trends in Asia, and live selling is something certainly that we've heard about since the beginning of the pandemic. Valerie, I wanted to ask you a quick question. So we talked a little bit about your plans in China. What can you share, kind of as you look out into the future? I know that maybe I even kind of miscast what your plans were in China when we were talking on some of the prep calls.
I mean, our plans in general, but again, APAC, because it's probably the market where we're having the slowest growth out of our various markets. It's exactly what you said, just a couple of, maybe a slide ago or so, Jose, around it's much more successful if you don't go in as a single channel. So we are finding that if we're not going to be going in brick and mortar and online, then we're going to hold until we can put in that time and investment behind that kind of a minimum dual pronged. I say minimum because we also have wholesale and marketplaces, right, that are also an option. So that's sort of how we're approaching China. We had been in China online sort of as a it wasn't really an afterthought, I don't want to say, but it was like a foothold for later.
Right.
And we came to realize like that wasn't worth it. You know what I mean? Like when we're ready to go in, guns blazing, more than one channel with the right investment, then we will go back. And until then, and that goes for all of our markets. And so there are also other smaller markets that, again, we were sort of testing. We weren't really putting a lot behind it. When we're ready to put a lot behind it, that's when we'll do it. So right now our APAC focuses are Hong Kong, where we have a history of stores owned and operated. Japan, where we are reopening our first, well, it's opening our first owned and operated, but we're reopening in the market after a couple of years. We'll be doing that in the next 30 days. So we're really, at this point, like just focusing where we know we can do it right. And again, nobody has all the money that they want to invest properly in all the areas that they want. So we're really making sure that we're putting the right amount of resources, yes, money, but also human resources, again, which are hard to come by, behind the markets that we know we can get traction, and always going in minimum 2 channels. So for us right now in APAC, that is Japan, that is Hong Kong, and that is Australia. And that doesn't mean that China is off the table. China is an extremely valuable market, but you have to do it well. It's, again, like I said, it's not an obvious win anymore.
And I'm going to come back to you on the kind of strategy 2.0 and marketplaces and the importance of the customer data that we talked about. But Jenna, you guys aren't too focused on the Asian market right now. Is there any plan, or what's
Well, no, it's actually great to hear you speak, because I'm taking mental notes as I'm learning from AE right now. No, so it's on the radar for sure. I would say we're pretty nascent in the next step in our global expansion. Our growth was very organic, right? We started with 1 store in Germany, and then we had another store, and then another store, and then we should probably have a website, right? And so over time, we kind of became this top 3 sneaker and streetwear retailer in Europe. And then boom, we went through an acquisition and came to the US, right? So that's how we've done it. Now what's in front of me is contemplating how do I get to Canada? How do I represent Snipes digitally in Canada? How do I look at South America? Not sure we're going to go the acquisition play there to get there. So, what's the plan for me? So it's all very nascent for us right now. We're kind of building out that strategy. So we should talk more, and you should tell me I should do this.
And is there any...
But it also goes back to what you said earlier, like leveraging the stores as ways to build up the customer database to get people online. Like that's the point, I think, of the minimum 2-pronged approach, right? The minimum 2-channel approach is that you that way you can like gain leverage across the channels, as opposed to being dependent on like just performance marketing or being dependent on just footfall or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would definitely, let's just have a chat right now in front of everyone. So my perspective was, walking into this was, well, wouldn't it be great if I could build a market digitally, right? To warrant the right to either acquire a business in Canada or to create a physical foothold in Canada, as an example. The amount of resources and commitment, financially, emotionally, to take your business across border, right, and actually open up physical stores. Is there an office presence, et cetera? That's big, right? That's a big shift. So originally my thought was, well, let's just like dabble. Let's see if there's a market there. We know Finish Line's there and Foot Locker's there. Let's get digital cranking and see if there's an appetite or an ability to be competitive. But yeah, I want to talk more. You've got me thinking.
It's definitely possible. I don't want to like poo-poo, but it's more there. It takes more resources, I think, than we all sort of hope.
Sure.
Or wish that it would.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
So Jose, you guys are obviously well known around the world. I'm still kind of hung up on the huge piece of live selling versus the Tmall dynamic. We are having a lunch workshop where we're going to be looking deeper into some of the dynamics. But you guys are on Douyin in China. I mean, what are you guys seeing as far as this shift in marketplaces? I guess maybe the question is this just Polo specific pie chart shrinkage, if that's a word?
Yeah, I think for us the change has been perhaps more noticeable than other brands, but this has not come as a result of decreasing our investment in Tmall and JD. We're still spending the same amount of marketing dollars. It's just the return has completely collapsed. So JD and Tmall, to participate, it's really pay to play. And pre-COVID, it was already such a competitive field. So you're still rubbing elbows with all of those brands, perhaps more so than before. And now you also have the advent of live streaming. And the comparison that I like to make between the two is in live streaming, we're actually seeing a much stronger ROAS, not only on our marketing dollars, but also our bottom line. We can really push our product as if it were a DTC model, whereas on Tmall and other marketplaces, you're subject to commissions and all those other things that come into play. So the live stream advent has really been a growth story for us and other brands in China, but perhaps a little more for us because we started our first live streaming campaigns right when COVID started. And live streaming's been around for a while, but brands have only really started acting on live streaming the last 12 to 18 months. We did it about 24 months ago, and that actually bought us a lot of time, just being a few months before other brands. These are some examples of live streaming events that we've done in the last few months in China. The one on the left, this is on Douyin, and there's no audio because it's just a lot of craziness. There's a lot of music going on. There's a lot of screaming and yelling. They're all talking on top of one another. But that's just what this demographic is looking for. What we've also done in Turkey is we've started to partner with influencers and other KOLs in our stores, and we're live streaming actual fashion events from our stores. There's not really like a TikTok type live streaming equivalent in Turkey, so we're doing it a lot locally. This is another collaboration we did with Vogue. Again, we're doing a lot of live stream content. This is one of our stores that was, I think this was 12 months ago. And then this other one here is actually a little Red Book live stream event that we did a couple months ago as well. The one in our upper right-hand corner, some of you may have recognized it. This was our first live streaming event we did in 2020. And instead of participating in 618, we started a few days earlier just so that we're not part of the entire 618 influx, which, by the way, 618 is probably the second or third largest shopping event in China behind Singles Day. So 618 was really JD's answer to Tmall regarding Singles Day. And it was a very novel thing initially, but now it's just as competitive as Singles Day. So instead of investing in 618, we invested in, there's a buy promotion called 612. And it's not as competitive as 618. But those results, I don't know if you can see it, but we had our first live stream was 7 minutes, and it did about $250,000 in revenue. It's pretty wild. We're not seeing those kind of huge numbers today, but it's still six-figure amounts over the live stream of an hour or so. And this last slide here is just an example. Oh, there's two more. So quickly, two types of live streaming really are popular in China: the KOLs, key opinion leaders, and then just using on-air talent like QVC, HSN, etc. The difference between the two is KOLs, they have pretty large commission takes and pretty large upfront costs. Additionally, with a KOL, while they may dramatically scale your live stream, their audience is very loyal to the KOL, not to the brand. So we may have a blowout event with a particular KOL, and then those customers for our next live stream that did not feature that KOL, they're invisible. They don't participate. So if you have, I think, a lot of inventory you need to maybe get rid of for the holidays or something, KOL is an interesting play. But if you want a healthy long-term business cycle, we have high margins. Perhaps the scale is not as quick, but over time you can get there. The on-air talent, QVC, HSN type of live streams work better.
That's interesting. Actually, in my last company, China was one of our two big markets. It was North America and China. And we sort of saw a very similar thing. And we actually ended up, the vast majority of our live streaming, which we did, it was easily 10% of our online business when I left, so 2 years ago, was in-store associates who we trained or they they sort of found their calling doing this. And we did so many hours of it per week, and to your point, we just found that sort of homegrown spokesperson was a lot more effective, kind of on an ongoing basis than the KOLs.
So is it the KOL caters just to that country, or is there like this pocket in Germany where they love up KOL? You know, I mean, is there a cross border, or is it really just kind of the local KOLs and influencers and things?
They're local to their platform sometimes. Like sometimes it's like this KOL is just on Tmall, and some, you know what I mean. This one's just on Little Red Book or whatever.
And then finally, just these are two KOLs that we've used recently. One is called Closed Brother, and another one is called Baby Girl. Closed Brother, actually, the video that I showed was Closed Brother, and they have about 28 million fans. I think it's about 31 now. ASV is average simultaneous viewers, 110,000 people. During our campaign, there was about 76,000 live streams taking place. But the cost is very different here. So Baby Girl has a much smaller followership and much lower ASV, but she charges about 4 times that of Clothes Brother. And the reason is just the engagement and the conversion you see with high net KOLs like Baby Girl, although their top line stats are not as strong as the more mid-range KOLs. Bottom line, you're going to be pushing a lot more healthy business. The Closed Brother type of KOLs really work a lot on discounts, where Baby Girls are more of an authentic full price KOL. So there's a lot of nuances and differences between different KOLs. And I guess my takeaway here is if you're investing in KOL partnerships, the stats are very deceiving. One would think, oh, Closed Brother, they charge, half of Baby Girl, they have a lot more fans, but the business actually was stronger with Baby Girl. And the KOLs know this, and they charge accordingly for it.
Got it.
And that's about it. So thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
so-
I'll take a seat.
Come on back. Yeah. So Jenna, one of the things, my favorite comment was, we're an entertainment marketing company that happens to sell shoes. Where do you guys look at social and live selling, especially kind of differences between the U.S. and Europe, which is, kind of my back way of, educating people about your home markets in Europe?
Yeah, sure. So, if you asked our CEO the type of business we are, he would absolutely verbatim say that we are a marketing and entertainment company that happens to sell shoes. So a big part of how we differentiate ourselves in market is creating a lot of custom content, doing custom collabs, working with celebrities. And the avenues for communicating those collabs and working with those celebrities is obviously social media. And so we lean on social a lot. Our marketing activities are often championed in those arenas. What's interesting, this shift to live selling makes a ton of sense, right? Even if you're just looking at the algorithms on Instagram and Facebook right now, if you go take a still image and you post it on your feed, it gets like 7 likes at this point, right? Because they're just not prioritizing pushing your still assets. They want you to be using Reels. They want you to be creating video because their customer base, the younger customer base, where all of the future money is, all is watching video content constantly. So it makes sense that as we continue to try to reach down market and into that Gen Z and build those loyal relationships and consumers that are going to follow us into the future as they continue to grow their own earning potential, that video is the way that we're going to engage with them. And so we need technology to convert on that video. No one's going to watch a video, be 20 seconds or 5 seconds into a 30-second video and click a redirect and click away and then go to a website. They want to see the end of the video, right? So we have to find ways to embed conversion into these videos, and live selling does that perfectly. So, it's interesting. We've been watching it. We're not doing it. It's squarely on the radar right now. My impression a year ago was that, this is a shiny penny. It's going to come. It's going to go. But the way that these social platforms have really leaned into the value of video, I believe it is going to be here to stay. So it's something that, we're talking to tech.
Yeah, your point on tech is on point. E-com platforms, especially Shopify, they don't really have a baked-in live stream solution. Where these social platforms overseas, these are social commerce platforms. They're not e-commerce platforms. The only exception I can speak of is we run Shopify for most of our global sites, but in LATAM, we're running VTEX. And VTEX actually has an amazing built-in live streaming module into the platform So it really integrates your shopping catalog very nicely onto the live stream. When someone is speaking of a particular product, you can map the product to be revealed at the same time as the person is speaking of it. And it's very, very seamless. It's probably the best e-com platform I've seen. So I don't know all of them, but I haven't seen Adobe Commerce do this. I haven't seen Salesforce do it without the integration of a very expensive and buggy cartridge. Shopify doesn't have it. So to your point of the tech stack, I think VTEX has done a nice job with that. I'm not related to VTEX or anything.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like, where's VTEX when I need them here? Anyway.
Well, it's actually the platform that we're looking at right now, so it's
there you go.
funny.
Yeah.
Good thing we're recording. We talked a little bit, Valerie, about your strategy 2.0, and it was kind of in the context of marketplaces versus DTC, which has long been kind of a conversation, and I know we'll be talking about that with Katie later in the afternoon. But what we've heard is we see this live selling. I should go back. We have a framework, and we've always kind of put the social platforms into the marketplace channels. It's the you've got the cross-border, you've got the regional builds, but then there's this nebulous middle of marketplaces, and where does social fit? What we're hearing now is we see social, especially live selling, more as a D2C channel. So how do you guys look? I mean, it comes down to the customer data, right?
Yeah, and I think that everything you said, I 100% agree. So we definitely are exploring marketplaces across all of our regions, Mercado Libre in Mexico, Amazon and Rakuten in Japan, and a few others in the Middle East is the other sort of like big area where we've gained some good traction with Namshi as an example. But the marketplaces are always going to be a supplement to our main online business, which is our DTC business, for exactly the reason that you said. We obviously want that customer ultimately to be a customer of the brand, not a customer of the marketplace. So it's important to us that ultimately we bring them on. And so it is important to us as we think about live stream, because same as you, I definitely always, we always wanted to try it, but it just has never made it to the top of the queue until very recently, and hopefully we'll be testing it in Mexico in the next couple of weeks. But it's important for us that whatever content we make, we can leverage it across as many platforms as possible. So, if we do something that's just with a KOL that's attached to a marketplace, like we can't take it out of that marketplace. But if we do something on our own, we can put it on our social channels, we can put it on our website, it can live for, there are a lot of different options. So everything you said, I agree.
Yeah, and I wanted to wrap up. There's kind of another flavor of social, and that's a lot of what you guys are doing. A lot of your stores are in some of the lower income areas of the city, inner city. Tell us a little about some of the social programs that you guys are doing, and maybe contrast a little bit, US versus Europe.
Yeah, no, I started by explaining that our CEO sees us as a entertainment and marketing company that happens to sell shoes. And what that has basically meant is finding a way to get into these incredibly niche markets, right? Whether it's skate or it's BMX or it's e-gaming, and finding the influencers and industry leaders and celebrities that kind of penetrate those markets and aligning with them and creating content and working with them to establish our brand within those niches. The U.S. was a little different, and we were given the autonomy to actually carve out our own path on how we were going to engage with and connect with our community. Don't get me wrong, we still have DJ Khaled on staff, right? We're still playing the celebrity game, but one thing that we've recognized is the fact that we are in these hyper-urban environments, and we are on the street. We have over 300 stores in the U.S. now. Crazy fast growth. And one reality within those stores is that the people that work there are the people that live in the community. And so we have this direct line into the community and the culture and our consumers. And what we've decided to do, rather than trying to fit them into a niche box, right? Like, oh, you're interested in e-gaming, or oh, you're interested in skate, and so we're going to speak to you through that lens. Instead, we just said, let's speak to you as a community member. And so I have like goosebumps. It's super nerdy and like feels really good. But we engage with these communities and we revitalize basketball courts, right? And we lean into basketball, or we'll create a community garden, or we'll, in every market we've dedicated this year that we're going to have a community computer lab where we outfit it with a bunch of Macs and get them Wi-Fi and make sure that the community can access the internet and technology. And so we gave away, thousands of turkeys on Thanksgiving. So we're really finding this beautiful philanthropic way of re-engaging with the community and learning and absorbing the culture that surrounds our stores, because that is what this all reflects. So it's giving us this unbelievably authentic way to support, empower, and celebrate our customers, our communities, our products, and the culture that lives and breathes within them. So all of that's celebrated
There's
on
been
social.
one word that we've used from the beginning here.
Yeah.
It's authenticity.
Yeah.
And that's what really drives things. I know we're over, but everybody gets a quick warm and fuzzy. I know you guys are doing some cool stuff with the horses.
Yeah, we do a lot of equine programs. We actually, I think the Sizzler showed, and one of the things we like to distinguish us from other polo brands is that because we're the actual brand of the sport, we subsidize a lot of collegiate programs. We have 50 colleges now in the U.S. Where we give them a lot of support, not only with equine programs, but also professional polo clothes. So we do have a sub-brand where we actually sell polo pants and proper polo shirts for the actual sport. And we partner with a lot of colleges to support their own polo programs, and also equine programs we're supporting as well.
I know you guys are doing some cool things as well.
It's funny that all three of our brands have authenticity as a core value. It's a super original. But for decades, or so for Aerie, it's been a decade and a half, and for AE longer. That those have been like Aerie Real and then AE Authentic. Those are our core values and what we speak to with the customer. And it's nice to see when that reflects globally, right? It's like really nice to see when your brand actually resonates globally, not just in the market that it was made in. And so just this past year, one of the recent things that made us feel good was, every year we go big into Pride. We have Pride product capsule. We have all these windows, and that's big in the US. It works really well. And a lot of our international markets, are more conservative and have not wanted to touch this stuff in the past years. And a handful of the more conservative ones tried it this year for the first time, and it was a huge success, like a shock to all of them. And next year, and they mostly just tried the product. Next year, they're going to go full in with the window displays, et cetera. So it's just really good to see that this like message of inclusivity and diversity is like really starting to hit everywhere. And I think it speaks to, as business people, like we shouldn't underestimate the customer. You know what I mean? Like oftentimes the customer is way ahead of us, whether it's with live streaming or with Pride, like it's just something to always keep in mind.
Great place to end. As always, the conversation starts up here, but it goes throughout the day. Lots of things we didn't even get to tap into, but I encourage you guys to, talk to folks like Jenna's been doing. So Matt, we just raised the bar for you there, but Matt and his team are coming up. So just thanks to these guys. We're going to do a quick chair shuffle and we'll get right into the next session. Thank you, guys.